Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
China's startup dream is moving beyond the skyscrapers. A growing number of solo founders are leaving Beijing's high rents and Shenzhen's crowded tech scenes for county towns. Why are these entrepreneurs turning away from the megacities? And could the next breakthrough come not from a glass tower, but from vegetable fields and fishing villages? Coming to you from our studios here in Beijing, this is Roundtable. I'm Fei Fei, and for today's program, I'm joined by Steve Hatherley and Yushun. First on today's show. What if you could build a real company without hiring anyone? AI now handles marketing, coding, customer service, and administration while you steer. And this idea isn't really that crazy and new in 2026. But here in China, the next question is, if one person with AI tools can run a business, does it really need to be in Beijing or Shenzhen? Well, earlier this year, we have AI agent apps exploded in these big cities that there are basically tools that don't just chat, but actually work around the clock while you can sleep. But there are also counties chasing this trend, handing out free AI devices to newcomers. They're not only offering subsidies only, they're also racing to attract one-person companies the way it once chased factories. So this new generation of solo entrepreneurs is looking past the megacities, and smaller counties are competing hard to win them. So by moving to a county, is it really a smart play in the AI era, or there are more hurdles than they assume? So we're zooming in again on OPC, one-person company again. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier this year when it really became a hot topic, but we do need to refresh our memories a little bit about these OPCs.
Yeah, OPC, one-person company, the name is quite self-explanatory. But in the AI era, it describes an entrepreneur, often literally just one person who uses AI tools to handle everything a whole team that used to do, like creating your content, make your design, have your logo, the company design, and customer service, after sales service, even software development. One person doing the job of maybe 10 with AI filling the gap. And this is where OpenClaw, that kind of project that we mentioned before in previous shows, it comes to the picture. It's essentially an AI agent system that can operate tools and carry out tasks on a user's behalf 24/7, but you need just pay them for a token. They need to run on these computers using the computing power. And rather than simply just chatting with you and waiting for instructions, they can do it by themselves.
Yeah, that was kind of a big deal. We used a whole portion of Roundtable to talk about that when NetEase's version came out. Was it Lobster AI, I think it was called?
Because originally the logo of that project is a claw, and then Chinese companies named it the Longxia or lobster, and now the name got used.
Yeah, and I think that was a desktop agent as well, which was kind of a big deal. It could do all the things you mentioned before. It could draft reports and organize inboxes and generate presentations and run scheduled tasks while you were sleeping, which was kind of a big deal for people too. And yeah, cities have noticed now that the number of OPCs are growing. It's becoming a thing nationwide, and they are doing things. They're taking measures to attract these CEOs, these one-person company CEOs, to move there and try to start their business there and grow it there.
Yeah, according to actually a 2026 OPC development report, the number, so these governments are creating what they call OPC communities, and the number of these OPC communities nationwide jumped from 95 to over 600 in the first half of this year, spanning 24 different provinces and regions. And another report coming from the State Administration for Market Regulation describes this OPC sector as entering entering a phase of rapid expansion with most of these communities and companies really concentrated in certain areas like the Yangtze River Delta region where Shanghai and Hangzhou located, or the Pearl River Delta region where Shenzhen is, and also Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei region where we are here, and with some rising innovation hubs like Chengdu and also Chongqing. But they have like their own industrial strengths on some level, isn't it?
Yeah, they have like different categories to be actually developed in. Hangzhou has positioned itself as a national benchmark hub for AI plus OPC entrepreneurship, and it is driven by its deep e-commerce roots. Of course, we know Alibaba started there. NetEase, we mentioned it also started there. They have their headquarters there. And, of course, strong governmental support. They give a lot of these companies, startups, and also OPCs a lot of incentives. And there are many industries and areas they're focusing in. E-commerce and traffic operations, of course, leveraging Alibaba's ecosystem for online retail and digital marketing. AI plus finance, okay? Fintech applications and also AI-driven financial services, and urban management and smart city solutions. That because Hangzhou is also one of the cities that I see to be one of the first to deploy the robotic police officer on the road. Yeah, they started to use a lot of these high tech to make the whole city the hub of many of these things.
Yeah, Hangzhou is a good example. Shenzhen, also a good example. Their OPC ecosystem is really deeply tied to its hardware supply chain, which is pretty world-class, by the way, and also their manufacturing prowess. AI, hardware, robotics, a lot of smart devices, a lot of IoT products, cross-border e-commerce is big in Shenzhen. Export-oriented trade leverages the city's logistics and overseas parcel networks, things like that. Of course, AI software tools, all of those things put together make Shenzhen an attractive place for one-person companies to go and start up too. But also Beijing, you mentioned this area with Tianjin and Hebei. It's also supported a lot through different policies. Maybe the good examples would be about the knowledge-intensive sectors. And also, I think just the fact that you've got three different regions, geographically speaking, that are right next to each other. So there's kind of a support network in place already.
Yes, so we're sort of explaining the reasons why big cities can be, the reason why these OPCs are concentrated in these more developed areas, and also where most big cities in China are located. They have a lot of, as we mentioned, strong business ecosystems, like what Shenzhen is, OPC is most focusing on hardware supply chain, manufacturing, but also when it comes to government support, they also have very heavy government supports coming from either Beijing, Shenzhen, and all the other cities we mentioned about. But then for the past, I think, half a year or so, we're also seeing that living in big cities for these OPCs, for these solo entrepreneurs, isn't that easy, isn't it? Even with all the supports coming from the governments, coming from the whole ecosystem of different industries and businesses, even with incentives and really cash sending out from governmental support schemes, they're still facing a lot of hurdles surviving in these megacities.
Yeah, because opportunity is one thing, and the cost of being in that environment with a lot of opportunity is another thing. So rent, food, transportation, everything in a mega city carries a premium. First of all, the basic cost could be higher than in some smaller cities. And one founder, burned through 100,000 yuan, roughly $15,000, in just 3 months by starting up an one-person company.
Yeah. These big cities, it's not that they don't offer great incentives to go there in the first place. It's that the incentives run out after a period of time. Shanghai, for example, they have a group there. They put out a program called Zero Bound Cube. and it offers OPCs 36 months of rent-free office space and 12 months of free apartments, which is amazing. I mean, that's an incredible incentive considering Shanghai is one of the places to be, if you will, for that type of startup, but also a very expensive place to be for rent and office space too. So it's great that they're there to provide that, but it's, like I said, it's limited. It's 36 months and 12 months, respectively. So what happens after that 36 months and 12 months? Well, then you have to pay bills, which can, as you just said, Yushun, can make you run through about $15,000 in about 3 months' time.
Yeah.
And also costs for computing power are rising because this is kind of the the main workforce of a lot of these OPCs and
The main employee.
Exactly. So daily token consumption can easily reach hundreds of millions. For some OPCs that have not profitable yet, maybe they're just new, computing costs can account for more than 80% of their total expenses. And also, plus what we've noticed in recent years, the price of chips, like the rental prices for NVIDIA chips, have surged by more than 30% in just 6 months, with some startups paying as much as 3.7 per chip per hour. Some startups have to already been forced to sign long-term rental agreements with monthly costs per unit of computing power rising by as much as 32% from previous levels. So interference computing rental prices have just risen by nearly 40% over the past 6 months. The whole cost of running an OPC is just rising. Plus, what we know is that, the housing things. Actually, we also had this discussion, even though nationwide the price of housing is decreasing, but in some of these bigger cities, especially these mega cities, the rental price is actually also rising.
So, and there are other factors in competition. When you have hundreds and thousands of the same OPC, the same sort of business model in one city, how do you make sure you can survive in this highly competitive environment? And then that's why we're zooming in on some of the new, I won't say it's a new a nationwide shift, but it's definitely something that worth mentioning is about some young these solo entrepreneurs, they're moving to smaller cities and even counties, which is very, very surprising. That's not the first choice for many of these startups and entrepreneurs when you are thinking about starting a new company. Why not go to this county in this province?
Yeah.
But they're doing that. What are the reasons behind why are counties looking so attractive to these young entrepreneurs now?
These counties aren't just, waiting there because they've done a lot for preparing for the whole situation and the development of OPCs. And one example is this a little county in Hainan. It's called Chiang Mai. And, they reacted so quickly because OPCs are actually a pretty, natural fit for what Chiang Mai has already been building. It is a county in Hainan, we mentioned, but economically it's already a major digital economy hub. Its GDP reached around 551 billion yuan, or roughly $76 billion in 2024, with, services count for about 60% of its whole economy. And to put it in context, its GDP is about 1/10 of Shanghai's, but actually Chiang Mai has only about 500,000 people, which means roughly 1/50th of Shanghai's population. So you can see how powerful, first of all, this county is. They've been building up the foundation for these kind of whole new industry. And also the economy and their core industries just generated a whole environment for a lot of these OPCs to develop.
There was an example of a cross-border e-commerce entrepreneur. I think his name was Liao, and eventually he settled there. where you're talking about. He was drawn by Hainan's free trade ports, trade and advantages. It kind of suited his business.
Yeah.
And he uses AI to generate videos and optimize product designs, which is kind of a common, OPC thing to do. And he said that his overall entrepreneurial costs fell by around 70% after making that move. So there's a pretty good reason to move from a mega city to a smaller place.
So it's not only just about saving money, lower cost. It also means, he mentioned, that it meant lower risk in trying new things. So it sort of gave him that confidence who can start experiment on more new things. And I think another thing that most of counties didn't really offer, that most big cities didn't offer, that counties can offer, is about the access to real industries, because we're not only talking about Chiang Mai County that are doing this, attracting OPC entrepreneurs. Different other counties are also doing similar things. So they are able to offer some of the industrial scenarios that Beijing, Shenzhen, or Shanghai really miss.
Some counties are turning their old industries into new advantages. Shouguang in Shandong is very famous for growing vegetables, but not tech. Instead of just treating that as a disadvantage, its local AIGC OPC industrial base is building a lot of things: AI-generated short dramas and ad content for agricultural businesses, new way to promote their products, a chatbot that helps farmers diagnose vegetable diseases, even a planned data labeling operation built on the sheer volume of agricultural data the local vegetable industry already generates. So they are using the previous or former advantage of their own industry to make it and fit into the new era of these AI and also OPC era.
Yeah, and the advantage there is that you have, like you said, Fei Fei, you have access to the real market. You have access to the real problems that need to be solved. And there you can have your genuinely valuable, specialized data that you can use to develop your OPC, and the problems right at your doorstep that need solving. So that's an obvious advantage too. If you are in a bigger city, you might not have direct access to those industries, and you might not have direct access to the clients either. I was reading a story about a CEO of a one-person company who was saying that it was very difficult to get new clients because in a mega city, if you don't have a whole big staff with your company, a client might look at you and say, well, you don't have enough people to work on our project. So he said that he deliberately would leave that information out when he was doing a pitch, that it was only him. Whereas, yeah, because, a bigger client might think, oh, you're just one person. How are you going to handle this? But when you are in a smaller region and you have direct access to the clients themselves, then it's not even a concern anymore.
Yeah, and also some counties, I think very interestingly, they're not only offering orders, they are also offering orders, not just giving out. I think when we're talking about attracting these OPCs, most of our stories about giving out supportive measures from the government. Subsidies is one part, like rent-free office areas or rent-free apartments. But some counties are also experimenting with sort of building connections between these entrepreneurs with the market. I think Dongyuan County in Guangdong can be a very, very innovative and interesting example in this sense. They've collected more than 200 real business needs from universities, local companies, rural areas, and they created a demand pool that young entrepreneurs can go there and find if there are some orders that my expertise can help.
It's such a huge difference because you can get a government grant, which is a wonderful way to start your business. It takes a lot of the financial pressure off. But if you know there's business waiting there for you, you know that there's millions of dollars in business waiting there, all you need to do is go and set up and solve their problems, and it's immediate business, that's a completely different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's also a kind of a quieter and lifestyle-driven reason
Yeah,
that people are choosing.
Yeah, the non-business reasons.
For some entrepreneurs, this isn't purely a financial calculation or option that they're choosing. It's also about how they want to work and live day to day. Liao also describes that big cities are offering resource density, while he thinks of counties as offering entrepreneurial space. He says he no longer feels like he has to fight for every single opportunity, and the slower pace has made it easier to balance work and life. Well, I'm not sure this is, something that a lot of these very, very competitive industries are encouraging, because I think for entrepreneurs, if you think, okay, I want to have work-life balance, I don't think you will
Well, I think
succeed
most
or
of
in
the
any way.
entrepreneurs would say if you decide to start up your own business, that means you will not have work-life balance.
But, I mean, it could be other factors too, right? If you think of Beijing's rush hour traffic or Shanghai's busiest, morning commutes, the subways where you're jam-packed with other people. It could be things like that too. You could casually wake up in the morning and get in your car or public transportation and not have to fight for a seat. All those little tiny quality of life things could add up for a person, and those could also be big incentives.
Oh, maybe that's the reason why this Liao entrepreneur, the one who decided to move to Chiang Mai in Hainan to start his business, that he can start thinking about more room for his experimental ideas, because there is less, in a sense, anxiety on some certain level for him to think about survival, to think about growth of his business. But we've been picturing a lot of the perks that counties can offer. And also, I think a lot of people didn't realize, like county level market, when we're talking about counties and towns, many people think they don't really have a lot of opportunities. That's mostly the storytelling would be about. But surprisingly, when it comes to the markets in counties and towns in China, it's much bigger than most people assume. Actually, some numbers say the retail sales coming from Chinese counties and towns can make up close to 40% of the total retail sales in the first 5 months of this year in this country. So it's a giant place, have a lot of potential for these businesses to explore. But I do want to sort of make the picture holistic on some level, is that moving to a county is not always so rosy, so bright future, because if so, why not everybody just move to different counties? We have thousands of different counties in China. You can just make that move.
Well, I mean, when you're moving to a smaller area, you're going to be reducing the talent pool. And I don't think that matters what industry you're working in or what industry your OPC is in. And this is true around the world. The mega cities are where people flock to, and it's where you'll have the most competition for work, but the most competition means a higher talent pool. When you go to smaller places, sure, you might have interest from lots and lots of people. There was a place in one AI company in Shanxi where about 300 to 400 people, local people, applied within days to work at that company, but not a lot of the people matched the skills that were required from the company. But, just to get through all the interviews, I think the people in charge said it took 2 to 3 days just to do those. So the demand is there. But perhaps there, and I don't mean to be condescending when I say this, but perhaps there's a ceiling in terms of the qualifications of the people, depending on the company that they're applying for.
And also the whole background that, or the soils, quote unquote, soil that you can have in these counties may not be as powerful as in some other mega cities, because this is the real and measurable gap, not just a kind of vague impression. Industry search on maybe AI in China's counties found that roughly 60% of small and medium business owners at the county level lack even basic AI literacy, and also digital talent density in counties generally trails big cities by a wide margin.
Sure, and that's something you're going to see all around the world too. But this reminds me right now of when we were talking about leveling the playing field between the biggest cities in China and the smaller cities, is that when you have programs in place, educational programs in place for both at the government level, but also at the educational level, starting from elementary school, when you have community programs in place where you can educate the entire community on how to use AI effectively, which is a broad stroke term, I know. But when you do that, then when these OPCs or any AI company for that matter comes, they're going to have very specific needs. And if the local community already has some level of education and training on that, then it's going to be good for everyone involved.
And also, I think it's more of a transitional phase issue that when you we only start to talking about AI on a large scale starting this year, really, especially when it comes to OPCs and other concepts related to artificial intelligence. And of course, when it comes to smaller counties and towns, when people don't have that much resources and access to these more still high-tech elements, it will take time for them to get that level of literacy when it comes to AI or digital talent. But I think when we are seeing more OPCs going to these areas, it's also sort of a communicating or even teaching them, opening the doors to these different technological options out there. But I think another point that can be an issue is financing. Because when it comes to this starting your own business, regardless it's just one person, two people, or even 10 people, you always need financing back up. But maybe in these counties, that can be an issue compared to places like Beijing.
Yeah, county-level financial systems in some areas is still struggle with attracting capital and accessing credit, which is a kind of real problem for young OPCs without long credit histories or major assets. It kind of makes sense because, okay, if you're it's just like when we're choosing a takeout and you will see where it is. If you're seeing it in an unknown district and street, you will think, it is not an official restaurant that you can order hygienic food from. But same concept in this kind of things. If it is companies registered in bigger cities like Beijing and Shanghai, you may think, okay, of course, they registered in these bigger cities. But if it's seen in some smaller counties that you have never even heard of, people may worry about it. So that is one of the issues that these companies may face. And even well-connected AI founders in big cities describe investors as non-committal right now, because one entrepreneur described pitch meetings where the most common response is simply just, sounds good, let's keep watching, with no actual commitment attached.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a young CEO, even if it's not an OPC, if you're a young CEO, you might not have a long credit history. You might not have a lot of assets built up in your life. So convincing institutions to give you a lot of money to believe in you can be a challenging thing to do.
Yeah. So I guess starting a business, regardless in big cities like Shenzhen, Shanghai, or in a smaller county in Hainan or Shanxi or Shandong, have their own perks and downsides. So it's mostly about what your business really want. But I do want to check internationally. Is this starting OPC only uniquely happening in China? I don't think so, Steve.
No, not at all. In America, this is from the U.S. Census Bureau from last year. They counted almost 30 million, 29.8 million to be specific, non-employer businesses. That's what they're called. That's a reference to 2022's statistics. Those are businesses with no paid employees. That generated about a trillion and a half or more dollars. So obviously very successful. Most of those are self-employed individuals. They're operating small businesses. AI is helping out these one-person businesses in America too. So there's a trend in that direction. So yeah, we're seeing it kind of everywhere now around the world.
And what's really interesting difference is what's gonna happen next. I think in the US, the rise of AI-powered solo businesses is largely emerging through the market itself. But I think here in China, not only the market is welcoming, embracing AI companies or OPCs, the government also very looking at this entrepreneurs and thinking, well, I also want something here in my own city or in my own province. So I think we can see these two scenarios happening at the same time, and we can maybe compare notes from once in a while to see which one is doing what kind of process they're going through. But I think what it matters is about the choices, this kind of new business model, new technologies they're able to give to young people. Is not only about working in big corporates. You can also start to building your own business, regardless of how small you think your idea is. We'll check more on the development of OPCs in future episodes, so do stay tuned for more roundtable discussions. I'm Fei Fei, and together with Steve and Yushun,